Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another month here of our RV industry update information. My name's Josh, the RV Nerd. If this is the first time you're joining us, and what we're going to do here is kind of take a look at the current state of the RV industry, look how it's trended compared to last year, what news and events are happening right now, and what things should you pay attention to moving forward. Now, I need a quick couple bits of feedback and grace from you folks today. The first one here is that I'm trying a new little bit of audio equipment, so you're going to have to let me know how this kind of comes through. I've done some light testing, but I haven't really put it into practice yet. The other thing is, I'm not looking for a big outpouring of sympathy here or anything, because we all have our own lives and struggles, and there's plenty of people that have it far worse than me. But I've got a lot of family stuff going on right now, and I am just a complete walking ball of nerves and anxiety and borderline panic currently. You know, life comes at you, it comes and goes, but if I'm more distracted and squirrely than normal, and I'm throwing far more ums in there than normal, all I would ask is just for a few moments of understanding, a little grace from you today. That being said, let's get into it. So diving in here, let's kind of begin with something a little cold and analytical, maybe get myself moving a little bit. Let's look at some new RV retail stats. So these are actual RV sales and registrations. For only the second time since, I think, about 2023, the most recent stats have shown where we've sold more RVs in 1 month in 2025 versus 24. That being said, barely more, only about 331 more, but technically more. So essentially pretty flat. Otherwise, it's been a pretty steady renormalization to pre-COVID sales numbers. Year to date, though, there have been about a little over 186,000 RVs actually already purchased, which I think the actual number of RV sales far exceeds what a lot of people would necessarily expect. That is down versus last year, but only by like somewhere between 2 to 3%. I don't remember the 2.6%, I think, was the actual percentage there. If we kind of break this down a little further, look at it by segment, overall, probably is a surprise to nobody, travel trailers continue to really carry the market. It's the only segment that actually is up by volume. And really the volume segments that are up for the most part are the really more basic budget kind of campers. A lot of your bigger high-level fancy pants stuff is not catching on quite as hard this year. I think a lot of that is there's some folks who are kind of going back to basics. I think that there are some people certainly who that's just what they can afford, and maybe some. I've talked to a lot. Man, when I say a lot, I don't mean like an overwhelming thousands of number, but I've heard with greater frequency more and more people who are looking for even an entry-level RV because like, well, I want to get this thing and I want to live in it, and it's like, that's not what that's made for, but that's becoming a very actual reality for I fear, growing number of people, you know. Fifth wheels are mostly flat. They're down a little bit right there. Although if you peel into those numbers a little bit further, what you kind of find is there's a couple groups who are pretty much gobbling up market share from everybody else. There's some groups like Brinkley and Alliance continue to charge. I believe Jayco is up in fifth wheels in an otherwise down market, and they have been a brand. I'm going to talk a little bit more about them in a few minutes, but they've been a brand that has quietly been putting in some work, and I don't think people realize how hard they're working to stay very relevant and silently succeeding in doing that. Ignoring park models, because those stats are kind of polluted, not just by RV destination trailers, but actual park models. Skipping over that and looking at pop-ups, the pop-up market continues to dwindle. At this point, I'm genuinely curious if in a year or two, there will be any major manufacturers actually building pop-ups, because at this point in the main RV volume marketplace, it's pretty much Rockwood about the only player in that segment right now. Flipping over to motorized, it continues to just be black eye after black eye after black eye for the motorized RV market. You know, Class A motorhomes, they are down, I think, like 25%. Class C's are down the least, but they're still down over 6%. Class C's alone outsell Class A and B combined. Class C's are definitely the biggest volume segment, but I understand why these numbers are tough on there. The cost of those things has gotten, they've always been more expensive. Don't get me wrong, but like I remember when a basic Class C, an entry level basic Class C, we had like I remember we had these 3 floor plans. They were $59,995 all day, every day. Pick your floor plan, $59,995. That same camper today is like $89,995. And I don't know that it really has much more equipment than it used to. So I can understand why people are like, I don't know if that's worth it to me. But there's absolutely something with the motorized lifestyle. If you want to just get in it and go and experience things on the road, they are fantastic for that, no question. Class Bs are doing better than Class As, but only marginally. And if you, there's some crazy number like 216 registered Class B producers or something like that in North America. Some absolutely bonkers number, but only a couple builders basically do all of the motorhome production. So don't be surprised if you see fewer and fewer and fewer either motorhome names offered or an increase in homogenization where, you know, it's a normal thing in the RV industry where sometimes one RV is made under 2 names. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a whole lot more of that happen in motorized. I'm shocked we haven't seen it already. Quick little side note for you. This has nothing to do with RV industry news, but for the people that watch my channel all the time, a lot of people say, why don't you ever review motorhomes? I do some. I don't do a lot. But if you go back through and add up all those numbers that I just flashed on screen, there were over 77,000 towable RVs versus barely 3,000 motorized RVs represented in those statistics. If you do the math on that, the towable RV market is about 96% of the RV market right now. And my content, I try to shape according to that. My content tends to be about 96% towable. When those numbers shift, chances are my content will shift. Basically, you folks continue to drive this channel, whether you overtly ask for this, that, or the other thing, or through the demonstration of your actual purchase interest. All I'm trying to do is make the things that help the largest number of people. So if you've ever wondered why, I have nothing against motorhomes myself. I'm just trying to make the video that helps the largest number of people. That's all. Shifting away from new RVs to used RVs, looking at the wholesale auction values. This is kind of a good barometer. So wholesale is, you know, dealers buying stuff. Retail is customers buying stuff, just in case those you didn't know what those two things meant. But overall, no real shakeups here. The used values on both towables and motorized seem to have held pretty steady. What I want you to kind of note when you look at this, this is a 5-year set of rolling data right here. Go back about 4 years when the towable RV prices spiked, and we all know what was happening 4 years ago. If you look, every year since, the towable RV prices have stepped down. There have been a couple spikes up and down, but overall, you're seeing steps down year after year. So for somebody getting into the RV market, a used RV purchase is far more attractive right now than it potentially used to be. The flip side of that, what's kind of creating a bottleneck and a chokehold in the industry for a lot of people is interest rates are up now, and because the used values are lower, meaning what a customer is willing to pay for a used RV is lower, what a dealer is able to offer on trade is also equivalent proportionately lower. So people who purchased in that 4-year ago period brand new for the first time, when pricing was up higher, they're in a really harsh spot. It reminds me a lot of the housing market where, you know, if you purchase when values are high and then you sell when values are low, it's tougher. That's exactly what the used RV market looks like today. Motorized hasn't stepped down quite as severely, though it is still down a little bit versus 4 years ago. You might notice there was this like one crazy spike like a month ago in the values where just like almost 50% increased. Usually when that happens, because again, we've already established the motorized market is by volume massively smaller than the towable market. If a dealer needs to liquidate a couple dollars real fast, if they send a couple big motorhomes into the wholesale auction blocks, a couple of those sales will very quickly skew those numbers. So that's where you see those funny spikes. The motorized market, you really need to stand back and take a 1,000-yard view. And I mentioned lending. I found some, I think, eyebrow-raising lending stats. Obviously, I've buzzed my hair at this point, and you know, gives more room for my eyebrows to go up. But this report that I stumbled into, it came out fairly recently. Technically, it's examining data that dates back to 2024. But at that point, the total volume of wholesale RV loans out there, meaning dealer inventory that is in a revolving loan to a lender, aka dealer floor planning, was $15.5 billion with a B dollars. Now, at that same snapshot in time, there were about $11.5 billion worth of consumer retail loans currently active. I don't know what there really is to glean from those numbers. I saw those numbers and I was like, whoa. Like sometimes even living in this industry, I forget how much it actually represents. There were some really screwy things I noticed with this, though, that I think you might be able to potentially like get some insights from. The first one, you might see these reports where the average person's putting down 18.5% on their RV loan. Not really. No, they're not. I know this because I used to do a lot of things at my family's dealership before this location was Bish's RV, and I saw a lot of how a lot of things work. And what happens here is that 18.5%, a lot of times what's skewing that number is your trade-in value counts as value down, money down. So it's not that people are taking 18.5% of an RV's value and slapping a check down on the table to cover that. Most of that's a trade-in. Another big chunk of it is funny money, basically made up numbers. The old phrase, figures lie and liars figure. What happens here is, especially right now, there's a lot of customers who owe more on their RV than the market will bring to bear. You could call it inequity. The fancy sales talk for that is carryover. You know, it doesn't sound like negative money, but that's what it is. You owe more than it's potentially worth. And because MSRP values are inflated so high, that's kind of a thing that manufacturers do to allow dealers room to make this next transaction work. What a dealer can do is, let's say they're I don't know, that RV. Let's say they're selling that RV for $70,000. And let's say your trade-in is worth $40,000, or you're getting a $40,000 allowance on your trade-in, but it's worth $50,000. So you have a $10,000 in equity. What a dealer can do is when they write up the bank contract, they will write it up for like, they're buying this for $80,000, but they're getting, what did I say, 50? They're getting the $50,000 for their trade. So we're washing out their trade. They don't have any inequity. Lenders like that. Lenders don't like to see numbers in the red, but they don't mind a zero sometimes, as long as you have, you know, sometimes some other money down there. The problem is that, again, skews that 18.5% number. So, you know, depending on these other reports that you see out there, I want you to know what's really going on. And the thing is, banks know this happened. It's not like I'm like, oh, this is a big expose. Like, everybody knows this is how it works, but it makes the numbers stupid when other people report on it. And I don't want you to be suspect to that. Have some dealer agent across the table from me going, well, this is what everybody else does. No, they don't. I was also absolutely shocked, not only at the average amount financed on a new RV, but more specifically, the average amount financed on a used RV was way closer to the same value I saw on new. I don't know if that's just kind of a case of, we went through a phase not long ago, which is shaping today's lending stats, but we went through a phase not long ago where dealer inventory was so low and demand was so high, it didn't matter if you had new or used. You had an RV in stock and people wanted to purchase that. So the new versus used gap almost vanished. And I think that's still being represented in some of those existing active loan finance numbers today. That floored me. And I just returned from Jayco's 2026 display down in Grapevine, Texas. And I think I've already got one of my initial sneak preview videos of all the new things that they have coming out from down there. Um, I mentioned earlier how they have been silently succeeding at a lot of things, and I think I heard it verbalized really well down there. Their goal seems to be, we're going to do things better, not different. They're not trying to create new floor plans. They're not trying to go wacky, crazy new engineering that's unproven. What they're trying to do, they've added additional, PDI layers. They've added extra staff in key areas like that. Their goal is to improve quality control. Now, what I thought was really interesting is there was another guy like me who does a lot of like RV walkthrough review YouTube content who had never had the chance to record Jaycos before, who was down there for the first time. And what he said, he goes, I'm genuinely impressed. This is truly a cut better than the stuff that I normally see from the brands they normally cover. Now, I'm not trying to burn anybody, so I'm not going to get into specifics there. But it was really cool to hear an outsider's perspective, because when I started in this industry, my home dealership had Jayco from day one, so I've always been very close to them. But to hear a totally fresh set of eyes look at that, I thought was really interesting. The other thing that I liked, I think the most, was I chatted down there real quick with Ken Walters, the Jayco RV president, and I kind of said, hey, in my experience, I feel like you guys are genuinely trying to do this right. You're not making a big deal about it. You're just trying to put in the work. His response to me was, we've still got work to do. We ain't done yet. And I appreciated that. I like hearing that they know they're doing better than industry average right now, but they know that that's not exactly something to write home about, and they're trying to redefine what that standard should be. So time will tell whether they succeed or not. I've never seen a brand be perfect. I do appreciate, though, when brands are trying. And it is starting to sprinkle, so hopefully this holds off. I'm going to keep rolling for now anyway. Bish's RV recently expanded. We've added our 23rd active store into our lineup. I-29 RV in T, South Dakota is now, we're calling it Bish's RV of Sioux Falls, because that's the nearest major kind of metropolitan area. That seems to be a thing that we do a lot at Bish's RV. Anyway, that location, they have like a 17,000 square foot indoor showroom. And what's kind of nice about this is what you're going to find is pretty much all the same faces there as like when it was I-29 RV, now that it's Bish's. We don't come in and do what I call cleaning house. We don't walk in and go, okay, you don't have a job, you don't have a job, we're going to bring a guy in to do this. We don't do that. We don't have the resources for that. We want the existing local staff who know the local people, know the local business, to stay on board. Our goal is to grow and expand that. I've had a lot of people asking questions because that location had RVs, they had marine inventory, they had golf carts and all kinds of different stuff. Like, what's going to happen with all this different thing? We've tried dabbling in different things in the past, and what we found is that Bish's RV does best when we just handle RVs. That's what we know, and we're not going to try to... remember when flip phones first got cameras, and they weren't good phones, and they weren't good cameras? We don't want to be an RV flip phone. We just want to be Bish's RV. So the marine inventory will essentially be going away. Usually what happens there is the factories with which those brands are associated will buy back that inventory and resell it to another dealer real quick, usually in the local area, as much as that way they can avoid a bunch of shipping costs. The stuff like all the golf carts and whatnot that they still have in stock there, basically that's while it remains in stock. My guess is that stuff's probably going to be made pretty reasonable so that we can free up that kind of physical ground inventory space. Because in addition to all the RV offerings that were already there, which range from east to west to Winnebago to KZ, Thor motorized, so there might be some new stuff that I haven't been able to cover that I might be able to make new factory contacts and touch on. I'm excited about bringing some fresh blood to the channel, certainly, and I hope you are too. But we are also going to be bringing the full Jayco lineup down to that location, and will effectively be more than doubling the inventory and offerings that we originally had there. So again, it's not lip service. I'm not saying we want to grow that location. From the get, we are doubling down, and we are looking to make our presence known in that location. So even if you're not ready to purchase right now, one of the things that I recommend people do is shop your dealer the same way you shop an RV, and go in there, visit, and just get to know the team. Get to meet our culture, because we're new in town, and when you're ready, we want to be there for you. And I'm gonna have to do something I don't think I've ever done during one of these videos. The rain just cut loose like crazy out there. So I'm gonna have to do this like news anchor broadcast style. I look like Matt Foley, the motivational speaker over here. So again, bear with me a little bit today. I'm just trying to make it through. So first of all, some good news for some future potential buyers of things with diesel engines, whether it's a truck or a motorhome or a whatever. The EPA has announced that they're going to be reducing some restrictions, basically, as it relates to DEF and the inducement cycles that happen when your vehicle runs out. So, for those who don't know what all this means, um, to reduce diesel exhaust emissions, you need to use this stuff called DEF, diesel exhaust fluid. The trick is if your DEF reservoir runs empty while you're going down the road, the vehicle enters an inducement cycle, which very quickly reduces the amount of power, capacity, and output that vehicle can provide to again control emissions. The trick with this is that it happened very quickly, and owners had to be extremely on top of their DEF tank and their reservoir. And if you did run out, again, it would reduce the power of your vehicle so quickly, it could very quickly make your vehicle crawl down into creeper mode at a maximum of 5 miles per hour. And with so much reduced power that some people could get stuck unable to even climb a hill. And at that speed, in certain places, could prove very, very dangerous. So what they're doing here is they've announced that this will begin on 2027 model year engines. So this will not be an immediate thing that we will see. Also keep in mind, in the RV industry, the model year of your chassis can actually be different from the model year of the RV. It is like right now we're in the 2026 season. It is not unusual, as Tom Jones would say, to have a 2025 chassis on a 2026 RV. That's a perfectly normal thing. It really trips insurance companies up sometimes, so don't be surprised if you go through that. But for the 2027 model year engines, this inducement cycle will take vastly longer, and you will have a bottom limit of 25 miles an hour instead of 5 miles an hour. Now, 25 is still potentially dangerous in some situations, but it takes so much longer to get there that you will be far more able to find yourself a solution to refill your DEF reservoir. So good long-term news. I wish it was happening sooner. This, by the way, though, is coming off of, in 2023, they did something similar where they eased things up a little bit. So again, the goal here is to be, I think, more realistic with actual user info and usage and user usage. Yeah, we'll go with that. Let's talk interest rates. This is something that I mentioned earlier. Currently, interest rates are up versus where they were 4 years ago, which again, if somebody purchased 4 years ago at a higher purchase price and they have inequity carryover, whatever you want to call it, they're in a really hard spot to try to trade out of the RV, especially when the new RV loans have a higher interest rate than they used to. Well, the Federal Reserve policymakers have been looking at a couple of very challenging, conflicting factors. Job growth has been slow. It has been weak. I think I bumped the mic. Sorry, I'm still getting used to this thing. One of the things that helps spur job growth is a reduction in key interest rates, because it basically incentivizes companies to do more investment, which tends to mean more jobs and growth, and that helps the economy. The problem is that often leads to inflationary factors. On the flip side, inflation is also a factor that they're really worried about and looking at right now. And to combat that, you raise your rates, which then stifles job growth. So they've got these two opposing forces working at one another right here. And we're not really sure which way they're going to go. I guess it's supposed to be decided September 16th or 17th is the next time they're meeting, something like that. I also want to mention real quick, no matter what happens here, when you hear Federal Reserve interest rates, these are not the things that directly shape and influence RV loans, although there's a lot of people out there at various RV dealerships or whatever who would want you to think that, to try to make you say, well, the rates are going to go up or down, so you need to buy now before it gets worse. I'm not trying to fearmonger. I'm trying to educate. I hope you can appreciate and understand the difference between the two. It is possible that those key federal interest rates eventually trickle down and influence RV stuff, but that might not be something that we see till like spring or summer next year, either way, no matter what happens here. And something I'm really curious about is what's going to be happening with Lance RV. It was announced last month that Lance was under new ownership and back being held in the private sector, not in the publicly traded sector. And one of the main players here is a fellow named Bill Rex, which old dogs in the industry might remember the name Rexall RV. I kind of talked last month about Bill's time getting into the industry, but currently Lance is under the new ownership and management of Matt, Bill, and Bill's son Paul, I believe. And their goal, according to them, is restore Lance to its former glory. What I really like about this, I've never met Bill. I kind of want to because I think I'm going to like him, because people said, Bill, at your age, why are you buying Lance? And his response is, what else am I going to do? This is the only thing that I know. And I absolutely love it. And then the follow-up question, so what are you going to do different? What he said in response was, we're going to quit doing the stupid stuff they were doing. Awesome. You know what? If this is the kind of no-nonsense approach that we're going to get, I'm actually kind of excited to see what's going to happen here. But what he meant by that was stuff like, so to build a certain floor plan, they needed to use half a sheet of plywood, and then they would throw the other half away. Why? Use it somewhere. Use that half sheet of plywood on the next RV instead of throwing it away. That reduces costs, that increases efficiencies. They could even use it to like reinforce drawer bottoms, or where you mount speakers on the outside of a wall. Or there's all kinds of different ways that this stuff could be used. That just wasn't happening. There were a lot of inefficiencies. Although what I really loved, he goes, I'm inherently lazy, so I want to find the simplest way to do something, which actually really does end up helping for production reasons. You know what? It's not stupid if it works. Now, time will really tell, but another thing I was really curious about, I started making some calls and asking around. What they've been doing here and what their immediate plans are is not how can we get a marketing team involved to create messaging to entice people to buy the same thing that has already been built. Their first goal is they're working on improving and getting locked in their customer service and their parts departments. So taking care of the birds in the hand instead of looking for two in the bush. That's cool. Then they're going to completely revise a lot of the construction processes. And then after they get the product right, then they're going to go all in, telling you all about it. That's going to take a little bit of time, and they're going to have to earn a lot of people's trust. I'm a I believe it when I see it kind of guy. But that's the message that I want to hear. Now I just want to see him back it up. Another really cool thing for a whole number of reasons is that GE just announced that they're going to be investing like $3 billion, bringing multiple major production facilities into the US over the next 5 years. This could mean little over 1,000 jobs in some areas that could probably use them. What area couldn't use a couple more jobs? Certainly. But a lot of this, it'll be a combination of appliances being used for residential purposes, but also RV purposes. And GE had removed themselves from the RV space for a while. And basically, the biggest reason is they weren't willing to make their stuff as bad as the industry wanted it. Well, what you're finding right now is the GE appliances are some of the more expensive ones in RVs. And I've seen the data, they're also some of the best and most reliable things out there. Certainly, we've had to do some work on some, but they're doing a lot better than a lot of the average RV stuff. And that's why you don't see them on the cheap RV brands out there. So I think that's really cool. I like seeing jobs come in from overseas. And, when you have local supply chains, it avoids a lot of these kind of various import-export tariff conversations. You don't have to worry about dock strikes or something like that. It just creates a far more stable, reliable supply chain. So I'm really excited to see what happens with GE. And on the trade talks, that's the big conversation affecting a lot of things and shaping a lot of price tags, not just in the RV industry, but everything all over the place right now. On August 12th, US and China agreed on another, I don't know how else to say this, another 90-day tariff ceasefire where they essentially weren't going to make any major changes to any sort of major policies or anything like that. So for about the next 2.5 months, dating from the time this video comes out, we at least have another little blanket period of perhaps temporary stability, hopefully long term. There has been some talks that they may actually organize some actual trade summits and get all the major players in one room and just get this hammered out so that we as customers, we as dealers, etc., can actually have some reliability, some stability to actually know for 6 to 9 to 12 months how much is this stuff going to cost, because right now, man, it feels like day to day nobody knows. It's hard for us to do business that way. It's hard for you to be able to make purchases that way, you know? And on a somewhat related note, an executive order was recently signed that closes the de minimis loophole. For those who didn't know what that was, goods valued under $800 were exempt, basically, from import tariffs. And some companies leverage that in some really crafty ways. Like a customer had one big order composed of a bunch of small objects, so they would make a whole bunch of small shipments to avoid those import tariffs. That's been closed. Those things really aren't available anymore. I think if you, as a U.S. resident, like go to another country and then bring stuff back, you can still bring something like $200 worth of stuff without needing to like make special declarations or anything like that. Don't exactly take my word for that if you're doing that kind of gallivant, and make sure you check on it. But that will be something that affects not just the RV industry a little bit, but also just like the widgets and whiz bangs you see on the shelf at your favorite Walmart, Target, big box store. There's a lot of stuff that the RV industry utilized, effectively exploiting the de minimis loophole with the goal of keeping production and therefore RV purchase costs down, that are going to go away. So I'm not going to say the prices are going to double, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that. And my experience has been, anytime you give anybody an opportunity, you give them an inch on a price tag and they try to take a mile. So we might run into that. I hope not. I don't enjoy, I understand why customers are really not excited about coming in to go through a conventional purchase process. It constantly feels like you're a lamb getting led to slaughter, So anything that avoids that, I'm a fan of. I understand the economic reasons why this loophole was closed, but it has positives and negatives. So I guess we'll see how things shake out. I don't know. Anybody with shipping experience on this that could chime in a little bit, share a little more? I'd love to hear a little more of an expert opinion on that. Good, bad, ugly, in between. Couple bits of sad news as relate to the RV industry. Ruben Gruzeni has recently passed at age 90. It's kind of interesting when I kind of read on Ruben's overview. I never met the family myself, but it reminded me a lot of my own father, where he had this like old dog passion for the automotive industry that translated over and eventually morphed into an RV experience. Founding, their business in 1977, and then founding Coach House Custom Class B RVs, I think in 1985. From all accounts, people that I know that I trust, like there have been actually there's one guy specifically that I helped train in this industry that eventually just got tired of the cold and moved to Florida and became a sales member of their organizations, who's like, they have that same kind of classic family atmosphere that I always had up there in Michigan, and like seems to be good people trying to do the right thing sometimes in a challenging industry, The family continues those operations today in the spirit, of that. Take care of people, try to do things the right way, eat it when you have to, but always for the customer's benefit. And, just trying to be fair. And like, obviously I work for a different organization, but I'll give credit to anyone where it's due. And it sounds like that is an organization that overall is doing things the right way. Also recently leaving us here would be Larry Lippert at age 100, originally founding B&L Industries with his partner. I got to check my notes here. Oh, I didn't write down the name. Now I feel stupid. But the partner's name began with a B. That's the B and the L, which eventually became LCI. Obviously, I don't edit my videos a lot. And again, I'm just asking for a little bit of leeway this month. But Lippert began by basically making a roof system for like mobile home roofing that eventually morphed into the single largest consolidated supplier to the RV industry in the history of history. So, all I would ask on something like this, like everyone is absolutely entitled to their opinions, but whether you have, like, maybe you did some business with the location there in Florida, or you have a certain feeling about anything, remember that there's family members out there still. I would just ask that we be respectful to them in the same way that if, you know, a member of your family passed, you would want people to be respectful to them as well. But if you guys know anything, you look through the comments, you know that I don't like go through and comb the comments and make it only a happy go ducky kind of place. I try to let people speak their minds, but I just ask that we be a little respectful about that when we're talking about someone's family. And a couple tips of the metaphorical cap. First of all, to Jayco RV, they just had their they just started this industry outing. Is that number right? Wow. Raising over $50,000 for the Elkhart County Boys and Girls Club. That's a lot of scratch, man. That is really, really awesome. Anything that benefits kids, I'm happy with, but 50 grand, that's a nice chunk of change. So awesome, good on you, bully on you there, Jayco, for making that happen. Also, I swear, KZRV seems to pop up in these little tip of the cap segments all the time. They every year seem to do this thing where they get these big old bags that they stuff full of all kinds of essentials and gift cards to help teachers at local elementary schools. Because I tell you something I didn't realize. When my daughter first started attending school, my wife opted to offer just free assistance as like a teacher's aide. And what we discovered was how much money teachers take out of their own pockets to help benefit and educate their kids. So KZ giving back, benefiting educators and children alike. Man, please keep that up. Well, thank you again for allowing me to do this in a more office environment setting. You folks have said, Josh, you don't got to subject yourselves to the weather. So it took you up on that this time, but looks like that little cell has passed here. Appreciate you folks once again. I'll continue to do whatever I can as best as I'm able to put that information out there with the goal of doing nothing but educating you and letting you decide what's right, what's wrong, what's in between, and whatever. If you appreciate the information we have here, please throw this around, like share it in some kind of, you know, Facebook group or something like that. And if there's something else you want to learn about or a question you have, I might be able to make a couple little special topical videos. Leave me some notes, let me know, and I'll do my best to fill it in. So take care, stay safe, have fun, and happy camping, everyone.